Yes, I do. Venerable, today is May 26th, the day when the Buddha was born, when the Buddha obtained his enlightenment, and when he passed away. How do we know today is the actual day?
We don't know today is the actual day, but because of the full moon, then the traditions pass down that this lunar month is the anniversary, the lunar anniversary of the Buddha's or the Bodhisattva's birth and awakening and final Nibbana, Parinibbana. So, of course, this is the thing, the different traditions have passed down slightly different lunar calendars. The lunar calendars, even of South and Southeast Asia, can sometimes vary by 1 month. And then if we think about the lunar calendars of East Asia, then also sometimes different by 1 or 2 months. In terms of regularly, what is the first month is different in the East Asian lunar calendar. Normally that's about a month different. And then for the Tibetan lunar calendars as well, this year is very rare. Normally the Tibetan celebration of these 3 great events in the Buddha's life, but you could say not Tibetan but Himalayan celebration, generally that's been observed in the Himalayan countries. Often that's also about a month different. Even the East Asian calendar can be like about a month earlier, and the Himalayan calendar can be about a month later. But this year, amazingly, it's really wonderful because actually all 3 of these great, like vast areas of Asia, the time of this month's full moon, it's very rare that they've all coincided together this year. So the Himalayan traditions, also the peak day for these 3 great events passed down is on this full moon. I feel actually really wonderful that this year all of us are celebrating around the same time.
Except Cambodian.
But I think generally, rather than thinking about it like 100% literally, like which day is it on the lunar calendar, I think more about it as being the day that we commemorate these great events. And there's a good likelihood that it's either the actual day or it's within 1 month or at the most 2 months. But this year they're all coinciding together. So actually I'm going, except for the Cambodian. I'm so sorry about that. Well, you know, in my lifetime up till now, it seemed like always at least 1 or 2 or 3 of them were like 1 month different. And this year the Cambodian one is the one that's 1 month different. So really I think about it as the time that we choose to commemorate. And even if we consider our own birthdays now, like, do you know your birthday on the lunar calendar or do you know your birthday on the Western calendar, or both? Because they're not the same, right?
That's true.
Yeah, so because of there being 2 different calendars, and in this case we're talking about multiple calendars. So when they actually coincide together, that's quite amazing. And it might happen, you know, only very rarely in your life, that if you look at both of these calendars, that they'll coincide. Maybe it happens once in your life, that they align again. But for South and Southeast Asian people, there's yet another calendar. And that's the astro-solar calendar. And I'll be speaking about this later on tonight. I was invited to speak about the history and meaning of Vesak for the Hawaiian International Buddhist Association, because today is the United Nations International Day of Vesak. So for the celebration of the United Nations International Day of Vesak, I was invited to give a keynote talk. And so I'll be speaking about this because people often ask this question. And even people in India, we say it's the Buddha's homeland. Then so many Buddhist traditions are coming back to India, having pilgrimage in India, celebrating together. And then the Indian people say, but like so many different dates, how do we know which is the right one? But right now there is the Indian month of Vaishaka. So Indian month of Vaishaka also, then they say this time now is the Buddha Purnima, which means the Buddha, like, awakening moon, and also called the Buddha Jayanti, which means for the birth of the Buddha. A celebration anyway. Jayanti is celebration, but it also means celebrating the victory of a great saint or sage, whether it's their birthday or like their awakening or their final nirvana. A Jayanti can actually celebrate any one of those for a great sage or saint, so an important commemorative date for them. So we're even aligned with the Indian calendar this year, amazingly. From my historical research, because of the Indian friends asking this question, then I thought to see if I could learn a little bit of something about it. When I was a schoolgirl, like even through my high school, then junior high, for history, I was never particularly interested. I felt like history is like so political, and I don't know if they can trust what they're saying. And I just wasn't so interested in history at that time. But for my graduate school work, then I studied the Bhikkhuni, World Bhikkhuni Sangha history, because I was really interested to find out what happened to the Bhikkhuni Sangha over time. We have these old texts that show the Bhikkhunis as great awakened ones, great teachers, great leaders, co-leaders of the Sangha, praised and admired and raised to the status of being great, foremost, leading disciples of the Buddha by the Buddha himself. And then I thought, for what I saw in my lifetime of the situation for women in Buddhism, women's monasticism in Buddhism, then I just wondered, wow, what happened? What's going on? I thought we were liberal now and they were all backwards centuries ago, but it looks like the Buddha was the liberated one and we're backwards now. Just as a young American, that was my impression of the situation. I thought, what happened? I mean, because my own ignorant sense as a young American learning about Buddhism was that the point of Buddhism was to be passing on the Buddha's way and to be offering the Buddha's way to people. So then I thought, wow, why is this part seems like quite a big difference? I thought the Buddha was offering, full liberation and full opportunities for everybody. That was just my, kind of like my quick sense as a unknowledgeable young American. Yes? So then I thought, what happened? Because also I went to my school library and I could get out some books, and then I went to visit the university and I was able to check out University Library Pass. I could check out the Pali Text Society books, and what I read in there, in the Pali Text Society books, the translations of Mabel Bode, I.B. Horner, and others, looked like really that, undeniably, undoubtedly, canonically in the Tipitaka, that the situation looked so inspiring and awesome. But that really made me wonder what's going on with this, which was why I wanted to study then World Bhikkhuni Sangha history in my graduate school studies. And although I had never liked history before, I was just so really wondering what was going on. And then doing that, then I'd say all kinds of situations are circumstantial or conditional. So things happen because of a variety of connected conditions or correlated conditions. And also things cease if the supportive conditions for them come to an end. If they're not all present anymore, then those things change and they fade away and they cease. And this is absolutely fundamental in the Buddha's own awakened insight. So there are many things in Buddhism that we do find in other religious and faith traditions, but this particular element this insight, this effective insight into conditional causation, say paticca samuppada, or just the doctrine, very simply doctrine of hetupacaya. Hetupacaya, how would you translate it? Hetu is the cause, pacaya conditions. So I'm saying conditional causation. Let me ask the lady in the back row, what do you think is better in English, to say causal conditionality or conditional causation? Which explains the meaning more clearly in English? What do you think? I'm kind of, this is for hetu pacaya. Hetu means cause, and pacaya means the conditions. And this is essential in the Buddha's awakened insight, like how and why are things happening, and also how things stop. So if the conditions are there, something happens. And if the conditions aren't there, something will decrease and stop. So it's fundamental in the Arya Satya, the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha's very first teaching, is about that with regards to suffering. And then to see what the causes are for suffering, and then also asserting that when those causes are ended, that suffering will end. So this is the key to the whole thing. Also what the causes are for happiness, peace, well-being. If those conditions are absent, even we really want it to be so, if the supportive conditions are not present, just wanting it to be so is not enough. But if the supportive conditions are there, it will happen. And we can understand. I think most, like rational people, can understand, yes, this is a law of nature. This isn't some kind of esoteric spiritual truth that only the Buddha could realize and no one else could understand. When we think about it, we can see this is absolutely a law of nature. So applying that insight then to the question of what happened to the Bhikkhuni Sangha over time, one has to then understand, in the Buddha's lifetime, there were supportive conditions for all that we find in these records. And later on, in some places, because the Bhikkhuni Sangha didn't disappear everywhere all at once, but in some places, those supportive conditions did not continue. Other conditions came up that were not supportive, and so there was change. And now, it just continues and continues. Even now, the reason that we're able to exist is because supportive conditions have arisen again, that have supported this coming into being, this happening like this. So today is also the death anniversary of my most venerable Bhikkhu Upajjhaya. That means my preceptor from my full Bhikkhuni ordination. He passed away on this day, March 26th, 21 years ago. I really just want to pay honor to his memory. So for me, one of the big supportive conditions was, wow, there was a senior bhikkhu leader and teacher who had studied the Buddha's teaching of the Tipitaka, Dhamma, and Vinaya very deeply and contemplated it deeply, and who was renowned and revered and senior, but that wasn't the only condition. If there were no candidates, even as we can see in Cambodia sometimes, the senior bhikkhus like Sangharaja, one Sangharaja, two Sangharajas, three Sangharajas have expressed their support, but then also if there aren't women who have the supportive conditions to feel that they're able to go ahead, even there's the great supporting person or people like this, then still, so it's not just one condition that's needed, it's the always group of conditions, yes? So this is a fundamental truth in the Buddha's teaching. If we go back then to your question about this particular day, then the scholars observed that do Cambodian Khmer people also celebrate the astro-solar New Year?
Yes.
Yes. What's it called?
សួស្តីឆ្នាំថ្មី
What's that?
សួស្តីឆ្នាំថ្មី
Uh-oh. don't know if I can repeat it right now. In Thai, it's called Songkran.
That too.
And in Sanskrit, Samkranti. And then also Sinhalese people call it Avarudu, which just means the New Year. And so there's the lunar calendar and astro-solar calendar, and now also we have the Western calendar. According to the scholars, like for the lunar calendar and the Western calendar, they sometimes come together. Like for my preceptor's death anniversary, I don't remember it ever coinciding with Vesak before. Because one we're saying is May 26th on the Western calendar, we marked it, but we're celebrating Vesak on the lunar calendar. But then the astro-solar New Year you already celebrated, right? How long ago?
That was April.
About 2 months ago?
A month ago, April 26th.
Yes, right. But that wasn't on the lunar calendar, and it wasn't on the Western calendar. This was on the astro-solar calendar. So, for some people, some of the scholars say that at the time of the Buddha's birth, that time then was the astro-solar New Year. But the Buddhist monastic traditions have been following the lunar calendars for a long time, almost entirely developed the lunar calendar. So the astro-solar New Year and this full moon may have aligned at that time in past, long ago, but over time they drifted apart, right? So then we see this as being one of the reasons, perhaps, why, I don't know, for Thai people, then Thai people for the Lunar New Year are bathing the images of the Buddhas, and East Asian people are bathing the image of the baby Buddha for Vesak. Yes? So maybe that long ago, with these coinciding, then these traditions were together, but over time, then the lunar calendar and astro-solar calendars drifted apart further and further. Yes? So I don't know if that helps to answer your question, but wow, how amazing. We have as human beings, we have invented a lot of things, and we've invented a lot of calendars. And now, probably even in an app on your phone, you have the Western calendar, and on it has the moon dates.
Yeah.
Maybe it even has some of the astro-solar dates as well to bring them all together. Yes? So I feel like myself, I don't concern so much about whether this is really exactly, truly the proper full moon or not. But according to the texts that were passed down and the people who are trying to figure out the calendars, this was their best guess. So for many of them, but not all. Yes? So anyhow, I believe that the meaning is really to remember and to commemorate and to honor these great and important events in the life of the Buddha. Even for all of us, like for your daughter, do you have a birthday celebration? You do. Yeah, sure. And sometimes we remember the birthdays of people, or like my preceptor, the anniversary of his death. It's been more than 20 years, but I still remember it. So for the people that we care about, the people that we love, the people that we honor and appreciate, then even after, long after they were born, or long after they passed away, or maybe you'd celebrate your daughter's graduation, right? And she would remember. You remember also, I saw recently, for your graduation for your doctorate, yeah? For getting your PhD. So even a few years later, you still remember. It's something so important in the life. And why do you remember it? What's the reason that we remember?
It's so significant. It's
so
really
significant,
yeah.
yes. And when we remember the things that are significant, why do we do that? Why do we feel it's beneficial for us to remember these things?
It makes us feel good about it, I guess.
Makes you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one good reason. If it's something encouraging or something that's like uplifting or even something that's just like so important in your heart, or it's just human culture for the people that we think are important, that we care about, that we revere as ways of showing our love and care and reverence. This is how we do it as human beings. These are the ways that we do that. My understanding is that this remembrance and commemoration of the Buddha's birth, the Buddha's awakening, could be seen as a kind of graduation. I mean, he really became a master. He became a master at that time, greater than the master's degree, even greater than the doctor's degree. But he attained his goal in terms of what he wanted to, was working so hard to realize. So we also demarcate and remember the attainment of the important things. I know the people also who feel like in Buddhism, even I know them from this lifetime, when they had even some kind of significant experience, significant realization, significant insight, or they did something that was like really important for them in their path of practice, also generally they will remember that for their whole life. One of my senior mentors, later on in her life, before she passed away, she got dementia. Then even I went to visit her the same time her daughter went to visit her, and her daughter met me outside her door before I went in, and she said, "You know what? She can't even remember me. I don't think she's going to remember you." I know. She's got to remember me because I have such an important role in her life, right? But she said, you know, if she can't remember her daughter, I'm not sure that she'll remember anybody else. And it's true that she didn't really remember the circumstances, but what I saw was that her Dhamma, from her realization, from her practice, that part was not gone. That part was absolutely, in fact, it seemed even more strong and clear, like it had been released from all these kinds of memories and ideas of identity. And it's like just that strong, clear force of her Dhamma and her realization was just present. And you know, I saw Samdet Paramahansa. I saw him also here last in, I think the year, it may have been about the year 2000. At Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Marin, just a little bit south of here. And also, when I had spent time with him previously, assisting and supporting him on his international teaching and Dhamma sharing tour, at that time his memory seemed like so keen and so perfect, and his Dhamma was also great. His presence was also great. So much loving kindness is just this beaming being of loving kindness and clear insight about some of the fundamental important things in life is just like so clear, and like no one could bring him into any kind of, I don't know, doubt about those topics or contention about those topics, because he was just like absolutely clearly rooted in his values, deep sense of values and morals and what's important, even beyond the letters and the numbers of the suttas or the Vinaya teachings, or like he'd gone into the deeply grounded sense of these values and morals in the Buddhist teaching. So when I saw him later on, then, that probably would have been about 10 years later. So I still felt like a young adult at that time, but he seemed like he had gone from being like older middle age to being an elder. really a senior person at that time. But when I saw him at Spirit Rock, then he had all his attendants around him from the Cambodian monks, younger monks who were surrounding him all the time and serving and supporting him. And then, you know, the organizer was giving him advice, just go up the hill to the right, turn right, and then you'll be, if you need to, you can stop at the restroom, and then you go into the main hall. You go to the main hall, just turn right to go in, and then go to the front of the room. So if you heard these directions, I think you would be able to repeat them back and to follow that, right? Just go up the hill to the right, restrooms will be there on your left, or turn right, go straight, go ahead, it will be there ahead on the right. You might be able to repeat that and follow those directions. So they gave those directions to him. We started walking all together. I walked up the hill, and then no thought about what else to do. But I remembered, and the other younger monk assistants remembered, and then they mentioned that he now, I remember so keenly that time, he was wearing two hats. Two hats, one hat on top of another hat, and one hat was like a golden color and the other hat was like an orange color, so kind of cute. So charming and looking much older, but he's just beaming metta and like 100% present. It seemed like in every look, every word, every step, and the directions that he had heard for going into the hall at the top of the hill, gone. It happened several times, so it was good that he had his assistants with him. But in terms of his Dhamma, in terms of his presence in the Dhamma, it's just so clear that it's like many other things have now fallen away, and so his presence in the Dhamma was, it seemed like all the brighter, even as compared to 10 years before, and like just 100% presence, and how he was looking at, how he was engaging with every single person or thing was just so amazing, yes? But one thing that he did remember when he was asked about is someone asked to explain about significant event in his life as a Buddhist monk in this path, because this was for the International Buddhist Teachers Conference, the first one to be hosted in California. That's when I saw him last. So the whole hall was full of hundreds of Buddhist teachers from around the world, and he was asked to be present and asked to speak because he's considered a really world-class teacher, world-class master. His Holiness the Dalai Lama also came, and other great teachers. So this is something that the people wanted to know about, and for this part, he remembered the clearly, keenly significant moments in Dhamma, in terms of even his striving and even his frustration with things that he thought should work but didn't work, like staying with Ajahn Chah in the forest and keeping Vinaya very, very perfectly down to the smallest detail, living in the forest, such a simple life like this. I'm sure that it had many benefits. Obviously, that's much more virtuous than many other kinds of behavior that people are engaging in. But somehow, for the conditions, the causal conditions, does it sound right? The causal conditions, or the conditional causes, the causal conditions that then supported the key breakthrough for him in terms of breakthrough into the Dhamma, and the pain that he said he had held from the situation with the Khmer Rouge, like a barb in his heart, even when he was in the forest, staying in the kuti alone in the forest in Thailand, and like waking up, and the cold sweat shaking, like waking up as if with a scream. We would say this is post-traumatic stress, from just experiencing so many horrible and difficult conditions, and the known and loved people dying or trying to escape, trying to help them escape, so much trauma and stress and pain. Oh my goodness, our human beings, we have so many amazing abilities, and we have such abilities to cause stress and pain, and we also have such abilities. Paramahansa was trying to help the people out of their wounding and stress and pain day after day, and to use the Buddha's teaching to do so, which is what the Buddha's teaching is rightly meant for. It is rightly meant for the ending of suffering. The Buddha himself, although we say there are 84,000 Dhammakandas, like 84,000 elements of the teaching, or varieties of the teaching in the whole Tipitaka, seems like so much that it's almost unimaginable. And yet the Buddha, when he was asked to give a summary, how did he summarize? When he was asked to give like the most simple summary, then he said all of his teaching is just about suffering and the ending of suffering. So dukkha and dukkha nirodha. This is a simple summary of all of it. And the core insight underneath all of that is that insight into hetupajaya, conditional causation. This is the effective insight. Effective because the Buddha not only saw himself how to get free in his contemplation in the week after awakening, contemplating this truth that he had realized and experienced for himself, but also then he had the premise. Premise means not completely known yet. He had the premise, then the premise arose that he would be able to share this with other people effectively. That is, that they would be able to take and use this teaching for this right purpose. That is, for they themselves also to be able to end their suffering using this teaching. So when the Buddha was asked if it could be simplified even more, rather than simplifying it down to just suffering, just one thing is just suffering, it's simplified if down to just one thing, simplified down just to ending suffering, just to dukkha nirodha. Yes? Just to the ending of suffering. It's very important, this point, because just like 4 miles up the hill here, one time we had a rented vihara before this place was purchased. This property was purchased by our Dhamma Journey Support Foundation. And the son of the landlord came to visit us there. And then he said, "Oh, are you guys Buddhist?" "Well, yeah." He said, "Oh, yeah. I studied Buddhism, I had a class in college." I said, "Oh, really? What did you study? What did you learn?" And he said, "I learned the Buddha taught everything is suffering." How pitiful. This is the #1 thing that he remembers from his college class on world religions, with the section on Buddhism, is just that the Buddha taught that everything is suffering. It's not that it's completely wrong. The Buddha absolutely, definitely, straight up recognized the existence of suffering. But if we just take that to be like just one noble truth, just there is suffering, even it's not the same as saying everything is suffering, right? But if we even say there is suffering, suffering exists, it's not the same as saying everything is suffering. In fact, in the formulation of it, it doesn't say everything, it says there is suffering, right? There is suffering. But then going to the cause. Okay, But without the next part, even knowing that there are causes is not enough to be really helpful, right? It has to connect to the next part, which is what the Buddha was then contemplating after his awakening. It's seeing the whole chain of causal conditions, conditional causation, but then also contemplating, seeing when those conditions cease to exist, how the suffering also ceases to exist. So the dukkha nirodha, the cessation of suffering part. And then again, if it were only the Buddha himself, if it comes down to just one, then at least on one occasion then chose to say just cessation of suffering. Not only just suffering, but just, in terms of the point of the teaching. Right? But then the fourth noble truth is absolutely essential in that. Because if we have it just as a theory, or just as something that the Buddha gained insight into himself, it happens many times. I've even experienced this myself, that I got some kind of idea or realization about something, like the light bulb went on and I could see that. But am I able to walk the path? Is there a path? Can I see the path to be able to then do that? I think probably most of you also appreciate this. I imagine that Marlai would appreciate this so much. It's like you have a goal, an inspiration, you can see it, you can see how great it would be, you can see how wonderful and good it would be, how helpful, but how do you get there? Right? And then according to the Buddha's teaching, you have to look at the conditions. What are the conditions that are obstructive? Are there obstructive conditions that are present? Can they be reduced and eliminated? Can the obstacles be reduced and eliminated? Then also, what are the supportive conditions? Can those supportive conditions be cultivated, developed, and brought to fruition? For those who have studied the Arya Atangika Marga, that is the Noble Eightfold Path of the Buddha, you'll recognize which fold. Which fold am I talking about right now in the Noble Eightfold Path? These things that I was just talking about are part of a particular fold. Which one? Samadhi, right view. Right view makes it so you can see it. But it's really, what did you say?
I didn't say anything.
I thought I heard someone. Samma Vayama. Samma Vayamo. So we say that this one is right effort. Then the right effort, what I was talking about, is literally the definition of right effort. Right effort, sometimes people think right effort means you have to try harder. You're not trying hard enough. You have to try harder. But the Buddha's middle way realization isn't just about try harder. It's true, it's about not too hard, not too loose, like finding what is the right balance, but this insight into causation. If you have right view about it, then the right effort is putting that into practice. Even when this is on the Dhamma wheel, and we say the Dhamma wheel is the place where, if we're riding in our Dhamma vehicle, the Dhamma wheel is where our vehicle touches the road, where it touches the path. This is the point of contact with the path. The view is important. Having the wheel is important. Your mindfulness is also essential to be able to be awake in the situation. Otherwise, you can't connect. Right? If you're not awake in the situation, you're disconnected. The mindfulness is essential to be able to connect. And it's hard work sometimes. We can feel sleepy, we can feel hot, we can feel noisy. We have other things that we think we should be thinking about or remembering or taking care of. But the mindfulness is where we connect. And then this is where the wheel touches the road is with the right effort. Which parts, Ayasopana, what was I saying that reminded you of the Samma Vayama? Creating the conditions for the wholesome, right, or the needed supportive conditions for that, what you envision, what you saw, what you aspire to, the creating, developing, nurturing. You have to bring into existence and develop and cultivate the supportive conditions. And you have to look, are there obstacles or hindrances? And then how to reduce those as well. So it's really a brilliant formula and so obvious when we understand about it. You reduce the hindering conditions, reduce and eliminate them. You cultivate and develop the supportive conditions, the enabling conditions, and then what's to stop you? What's to stop that? If the hindrances and obstacles are gone, and your supportive conditions are there. So this is the wisdom. This is the panya that the Buddha awakened to and realized. It's so practical, so proper. And really all we need to do is to understand, okay, what are the hindrances and how do I reduce them? What are the helpful things and how do I generate them? How do I cultivate, nurture, and support them? And then that's your right effort, is to just, work on that. Work on that. That's it. That is the path. That is the path. So I think the time that was planned to be offered for Dhamma discussion, would you like to share something on it?
I'd like to summarize your talk in 2 sentences.
Please. I just wanted to recognize that I got the time check, and the time that was offered for this Dhamma discussion, the time check has come. Please,
Well, the question was about the date of the Buddha's birth, his full awakening, and his parinibbana. And I spoke about basically the reasons why we choose to commemorate and why the Buddha advised us to have these commemorations. Because the Buddha mentioned the establishment of stupas and the commemorations and remembrances. These will be skillful means to provide for the long-term survival and thriving of the Buddha's teaching over how many centuries and hundreds of years that there are these occasions. Now, you can have a unskillful commemoration. Let's say on 9/11, we could remember how traumatized we were on 9/11/01, and we could remember it by arousing our hatred or something like that. So that would not be a skillful commemoration. But the Buddha recommended skillful commemoration in order to remember the Buddha, remembering the enlightened qualities, remembering Sada, remembering our faith in the Buddha, and recalling the things that we should develop. And indeed, there are many things that the Buddha did that were not like ultimate realities. They were just practical things that the Buddha gave us, skillful means he gave us, in order for us to be successful in carrying on and continuing his teachings over this time. So it's not a ultimate truth that it has to be this full moon, but it's a practical, helpful, and beneficial gift to have this kind of commemoration.
Sadhu.
Thank you very much. I feel